Testing. Testing. Hello, 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 hello. Hello? Testing. 1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. Testing. 1 2 1 2. Testing. 1 2 3 4. This is just the pre-intro, everybody, you know. Y'all know how it goes. Got a lot. Huh? Yeah. 2 minus 5 or something like that. We could probably get that together. Alright, go ahead. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Alright. Let's see. Testing 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2 1 2. Geezy Truth News. All right, we got the new sound effect coming up here. Let's see what's up. Thank you. Brought to you by Sadar. Thank you very much. For more info, take a look. Alright, here we go. Now we're talking. Now we got some serious business up in here. Let's see. Is that all? That's right, everybody. What do you say? What do you think? Welcome to Geezy Truth News! Ha ha! Yeah, that's right. It is April 9th, 2020! It's insanity. What's going on, people? Callers call in. Masks, put them on. What's everybody doing, huh? You gotta, yeah, I can't believe it. So here we are. We're gonna, another show, GTN. We're gonna make it happen. Yeah, where have I been? Where's everybody been? Who knows? But, you know, we're all taking care of business. We're all doing what we gotta do. So, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. But, yeah, there's no need. All right? All right, seriously, we got a lot of things to still deal with. It's not like we haven't won. I mean, we've been winning, but, like, take it slow here. We got to figure things out. What's up with Q? What's up with Fetzer? What's up with all the different kinds of, what's all the things that is going on right now? What's up with Bill Gates, crypto, United Nations, all this, if you want to call it the Chinese coronavirus. What is up? So we're going to make it serious. Let's do it. I'd say callers call in, but at the same time, you might want to hold off because looks like my technical engineers are telling me right now that Bob and Harry right now, we got some new engineers here. They're telling us that there may be some technical difficulties, maybe some Wi-Fi issues, maybe some kind of a video, RGB, some kind of things, miswiring. We're going to see what's going on. All right, everybody? This ain't no joking. We're taking care of it, and we're going to find out what's all the hubbub right now. Talking to our correspondents, talking to our VIPs. What's everybody up to? Thank you. I mean, seriously. So, what do we do? What are the solutions? It's time to get business here. It's time to get real. We don't got time for all these fake pixie dust, fairy, magic tales, all these people are talking about, all these conspiracy theories, all these freaking things going on. All right. I mean, who is paying attention? Who is going on? What's up? Are we taking care of this country? Are we going towards the right direction? Is Donnie Boy doing what we want him to be doing? So this is all what we're going to be talking about. This is all everything we'll be figuring out. You know, this ain't rocket surgery. We're making it happen, and this ain't no Tom and Jerry show neither. So make the calls happen, make the things happen. Ain't nothing to it. Gangsta Rap made me do it, and the rest of them. So let's all just get taken care of here, you know? Alright. What is it? What's the timing? We're early. We're early. T-minus 2 minutes. Oh, excuse me. T-minus 1 minute. We are early. We're doing good. Let's bring the... Come on. There you go. Hey. Our technical engineers try, we're all doing our best here. Seriously. Thank you very much. Everybody. Let's just get the show on the road. I'm tired. Everybody is tired of all this nonsense. What are they doing? Suppressing, faking. Look at the market. Look what's going on. Finally, it tanks, but then things are going back up, and they're slowly trying to figure things out. Soros, quote, China taken over, head of the New World Order, end quote. Interesting. Who's got to say about all that? And what are the solutions, and what are we doing? So thank you. Seriously. Thank you. For real. We are here. It's come a long way. Whew. April 9th. Ain't it something? 2020. We're here. Everybody was asking for 2020. Well, here it is. So, let's get some things straight here. Okay, we're still early. But we're gonna set some things straight here. It's crazy. What's going on with the market? What's going on with the economy? What is everybody doing? It looks like, as of today, right now, 285.80 points dropped in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It's like 23,719.37. As of now, markets are closed. You know? And so here we are. It's at 23K, 23.7. Amazing. It's bouncing up. Everybody's saying it's bouncing up. But then you hear a lot of people saying bears and this. So, gold, 1685.60. So it's finally, slowly but surely, going a little bit up. So the gold bugs and everybody who has been waiting on this for their whole lives and all this crazy stuff going on. What's going on? Silver, 1540. Wow. The same pretty much since it's been going on. So, lots of suppression, lots of things going on, lots of... Gold is going a little bit up. Silver's going a little bit up. Silver's way underinflated. Gold, people would say the same thing. So there's that. Who's going to say about anything about any of that? It's amazing the suppression that they do is what's really going down. And then, you know, they pump it up. The Federal Reserve pumps up trillions of dollars into the market, stimulus package, all this stuff. Bitcoin, crypto, so BTC, Bitcoin is at 7,282.60. And so it's at 7,200 roughly. Very interesting. What else is going on? Q has been posting. Q's been posting. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of updates with all this stuff, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of this with Jim Fetzer, and we'll see what's going on. But it's very strange what's going on. The UN is pushing a global currency, which we've all been talking about this for years. Same with Bill Gates. Now he's pushing vaccines and chips, apparently mandatory. We'll see what happens. Nobody knows. The one thing is I don't like is fear porn, and I don't try to... Like, I hope we don't get that, you know, we're not trying to do any fear porn or anything like that. We're literally, like, as we're all doing, as being vigilantes, we're being independent media, you know, all the fake news, all the crazy stuff. This is what it all started. And remember what the most important thing is: pedogate, and the Fed, pedogate, Pizzagate, all this stuff. I mean, this is what's really important here, ladies and gentlemen. What's important here? So, you know, as we always talk about it, the introductions are annoying. I'm sure I understand. So, is there more stuff? Oh, wow, look at this. Q posted more today. So I was going to report on what he reported on yesterday. But please, people, look into what he's doing. Oh, this is very interesting. I mean, this is back in 1992 about Henry Kissinger. I don't feel like going into all of it right now, but please... go on qmap.pub, and then look at the QAnon posts. Whether you think it's fake or real or not, I mean, Henry Kissinger, this is a quote from him from May 21, 1992, talking about some pretty bad stuff. I mean, I'm just going to paraphrase some of this stuff. I mean, the one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by their world government, and a whole lot more. And I don't feel like explaining all that. And we all, again, hopefully we know what we're all talking about here. Most people that are paying attention are experts, have been doing this for a long time, and a lot of people are learning and taking care of all this stuff and doing it all at the same time. So, without further ado, let's get the show started. Let's see what's going on with the one and only Jim Fetzer.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? Perfect. How are you doing?
You gonna make a recording? I should turn on my camera then.
Whatever works, however you want to do it. We always make it work towards the end, and so.
So you're gonna make a video, right?
Yeah, let's do that like we usually do.
That's just fun.
Perfect. Yeah, very interesting times as always. How's everything doing, Jim?
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. All right. Let me set you up here. What's it doing here?
Now, is it okay if we just do an hour tonight?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just about ready.
Okay.
And I think we're good. How are we doing?
Good. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So you ready?
Yes.
All right. We'll start right now. Well, thank you very much, Jim, for coming on Geezy Truth News as always. And let's get back to business. What are the updates and what is going on?
Well, it turns out we're being subjected to the greatest scam in world history. It even overshadows the moon landing hoax, which I thought would be the all-time record holder. We're given reports that dramatic footage of bodies piling up in Manhattan hospitals, even from the usually reliable Zero Hedge. But when you go to the hospitals, they're empty. There's nothing there. It doesn't matter whether you're in Manhattan or whether you're in Stuttgart or wherever. This is an elaborate scam. It is true that a special makeshift morgue has been set up in Central Park, but actually appears to be for children who are being rescued from underground tunnels there, who've been subjected to sexual abuse and torture, some of whom are severely malnourished, rather than for coronavirus victims, of whom there appears to be a noticeable dearth. Even Jason Goodman went down to Elmhurst Hospital to check things out after a controversy was published in the New York Times, where a doctor, female, was claiming they were short of ventilators. The hospital was denying it. When Jason went down there, he couldn't find hide or hair of anything going on there. We got a German journalist going to a hospital teeming with coronavirus patients, but there was no one there either. Turns out CBS News has been broadcasting on March 25th footage that came from Italy that had been previously broadcast on March 22nd. Here's a real topper. Oli Domagard, whom I regard as the greatest cracker of false flags in the world, sent me the European mortality rates for the European nations. And I have the data here for 20 different nations, and none of them, not one of them, shows any peak, any increase because of a coronavirus pandemic. Now, we're told you can't prove a negative, but that's just false. You can prove there's no elephant in your living room, for example, which is a negative, by going to your living room and looking for signs of the presence of elephant. Finding none, you're entitled to infer that's because there is no elephant in your living room. We had this at Sandy Hook, where there was supposed to be 489 students there. If you subtract the 20 that were allegedly shot, that would have left 469 to be evacuated, not to mention some 70 cafeteria workers, custodians, secretaries, and the like. Well, we didn't see any signs of it. The police insisted that it had happened at specific times and locations. Well, lo and behold, we have dash cam footage from those times and locations, and there's nothing going on. Since there are no signs of evacuation at the times and places it would allege to be taking place, we're entitled to infer that's because no evacuation was taking place. There's a video you can find online. Americans ask, why are hundreds of hospitals empty? This is just dozens of ordinary citizens who turn themselves into journalists by going to hospitals all over the country, and they can't find any coronavirus patients. In fact, the hospitals are largely completely empty. Candace Owens has tweeted, the number one killer in America is heart disease. We have 1,002 people dying a day from heart disease. Did you know that if you die from heart disease now, and they determine you are an asymptomatic carrier of COVID-19 in your postmortem, they legally add your death to the coronavirus death toll? Here's Mike adding, I work in a medical examiner's office. Suicides and murders are being classified as coronavirus death. It's that bad. I have reports from experts around the world who are baffled by what's going on. They are absolutely astonished. And, you know, here's one. Dr. Sushard Bhakti, who is a specialist in microbiology, is a professor at the Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz, head of the Institute for Medical Microbiology and Hygiene, one of the most cited research scientists in German history. What he says, we are afraid that 1 million infections with a new virus will lead to 30 deaths per day over the next 100, over the next 100 days. But do we not realize that 20, 30, 40, or 100 patients positive for normal coronavirus, the ordinary flu virus, actually it's the same as a common cold virus, are already dying every day? In other words, the numbers aren't out of line. In fact, there's some showing that we're having more deaths from the seasonal flu than we're having from this coronavirus alleged pandemic. He continues, the government's anti-COVID-19 measures, this is what we're doing about it, are grotesque, absurd, and very dangerous. The life expectancy of millions is being shortened. The horrifying impact on the world economy threatens the existence of countless people. The consequences on medical care are profound. Already services to patients in need are reduced. Operations canceled. I had one on my thumb canceled. Practice is empty. Hospital personnel dwindling. All this will affect profoundly our whole society. All these measures are leading to self-destruction and collective suicide based on nothing but a spook. That's his word, nothing but a spook. Here's Dr. Joel Kettner, professor of community health science and surgery at Manitoba University, former chief public health officer for Manitoba Province, medical director of the International Center for Infectious Diseases. He says, I've never seen anything like this, anything anywhere near like this. I'm not talking about the pandemic, because I've seen 30 of them, one every year. It's called influenza and other respiratory illness viruses. We don't always know what they are. But I've never seen this reaction, and I'm trying to understand why. I worry about the message to the public, about the fear of coming into contact with people, being in the same space with people, shaking their hands, having meetings with people. I worry about many, many consequences related to that. In Hubei, China, in the province of Hubei, where there have been the most cases and deaths by far, the actual number of cases reported is 1 per 1,000. And the actual rate of deaths reported is 1 per 20,000. So perhaps that helps to put matters into perspective. Here's Dr. Ioannidis, professor of medicine, of health research and policy of biomedical data sciences at Stanford University School of Medicine and a professor of statistics at Stanford University School of Humanities and Sciences. He's director of the Stanford Prevention Research Center and co-director of the Meta Research Innovative Center at Stanford. He's also the editor-in-chief of the European Journal of Clinical Investigation. He was chairman at the Department of Hygiene and Epidemiology, University of Ionia School of Medicine, and as well as adjunct professor at Tufts School of Medicine. As a physician, scientist, and author, he has made many contributions to evidence-based medicine, epidemiology, data science, and clinical research. In addition, he pioneered the field of meta-research. He has shown much of the published research does not meet good scientific standards of evidence. That's putting it generously. What he says, patients who have been tested for SARS-CoV-2, which we're calling COVID-19, are disproportionately those with severe symptoms and bad outcomes. As most health systems have limited testing capacity, selection bias may be even worse in the near future, meaning finding what you're looking for in this case, and it's serious. In one situation where an entire closed population was tested, the Diamond Princess cruise ship with its quarantined passengers, the case fatality rate there was 1%. But this was a largely elderly population where the death rate from COVID-19 is much higher. Could the COVID-19 case fatality rate be that low? No, some say, pointing to the high rate in elderly people. However, even some so-called mild or common cold type coronaviruses that have been known for decades can have case fatality rates as high as 8% when they infect elderly people in nursing homes. If we had not known about a new virus out there and had not checked individuals with PCR tests, the number of total deaths due to influenza-like illness would not seem unusual this year at most. We might have casually noted that flu this season seems to be a bit worse than average. How bad is that? Meanwhile, the scientists whose doomsday pandemic model precipitated all this massive reaction has rolled back his estimates. This is Nigel Ferguson, who published a bombshell report predicting 2.2 million Americans, more than 500,000 Brits, would be killed. But now he has rolled it back. Instead of 500,000, he thinks there will be as many as 20,000 in UK. And if you apply that, that would mean instead of 2.2 million, we might have 200,000 in the U.S. Meanwhile, Trump has pointed out if it was up to the doctors, they'd shut down the entire world. He's ready to get the U.S. open for business in days. This was published a few days back. By confining lockdowns to hotspots and refuses to commit to following the missing Tony Fauci's advice on if it stayed. Fauci was set aside for that particular briefing, and I'll explain why that's totally appropriate. Meanwhile, Julian Rose in Global Research, an excellent journal, reports testing people for any strain of a coronavirus, not specifically for COVID-19, meaning we're dealing with a manufactured pandemic. I worked in the healthcare field. Here's the problem. We are testing people for any strain of a coronavirus, not specifically for COVID-19. There are no reliable tests for a specific COVID-19 virus. There are no reliable agencies or media outlets for reporting numbers of actual COVID-19 virus cases. This needs to be addressed first and foremost. Every action and reaction to COVID-19 is based on totally flawed data, and we simply cannot make accurate assessments. This is why you're hearing most people with COVID-19 are showing nothing more than a cold or flu-like symptoms. That's because most coronavirus strains are nothing more than cold or flu-like symptoms. The few actual novel coronavirus cases do have some worse respiratory responses, but still have a very promising recovery rate, especially those without prior issues. Meanwhile, this woman who's been appearing with Anthony Fauci by the name of Deborah Birx has admitted that the government is classifying all deaths of patients with coronavirus as COVID-19 deaths, regardless of cause. Now, let me make the obvious point. Just because you die and you had a COVID virus, which, as I say, comes in so many strains, virtually every one of us has it, that does not mean you died because of COVID-19. But here is this Deborah Birx, who it turns out her sister works for Bill Gates and the Melinda Gates Foundation. Her sister works for Bill Gates and Melinda Gates, where Bill Gates appears to be the malevolent force behind this entire fantastic scam on the world. This Deborah says there are other countries where if you had pre-existing conditions, let's say the virus caused you to go to the ICU and then have a heart or kidney problem, that they are recording the deaths as a heart issue or kidney issue and not a COVID-19. The intent is if someone dies with COVID-19, we are counting that. In other words, she's admitting we are grossly overcounting. Meanwhile, here it is again. Dr. Birx confirms all deaths of people infected with coronavirus, regardless of underlying conditions, are classified as COVID-19 deaths. We've taken a very liberal approach to mortality. But that's completely absurd. That's calculated to make the American people think the risk is overwhelmingly greater. And as I mentioned, she has a daughter who works for Bill Gates as Deputy Director of Strategy, Planning, and Management at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Her name is Laura Birx, B-I-R-X. And Bill Gates has been, tweeting, what's next for our foundation? I'm particularly excited about what the next year could mean for one of the best buys in global health, vaccines. Well, we know vaccines are a serious problem. Anyone who's paid any attention knows there's a direct statistical correlation between the use of vaccines with mercury or aluminum bases as preservatives and the growth of autism in this country, which has become staggering. In fact, by some estimates, by 2050, half of our children, 50% of our children will be autistic. Meanwhile, because of the sloppy way they're testing, which means absolutely nothing, and appears to be one of the reasons why Hillary Clinton wants there to be more testing, so we'll get more false positive results to scare the wits out of the American people. We have more than 700 employees at one Detroit hospital test positive. Well, that's simply absurd. Not only that, but here's a comparison chart about various diseases, their deaths, the global pandemic declared or not by who, emergency declared or not, attention of U.S. government, U.S. response. Take the H1N1 flu from 2009 to 2010. That flu produced 12,469 deaths. It was declared a global pandemic by who? There was a U.S. emergency declared, and there was a certain amount of attention in the media. The U.S. response was a special vaccination program. But look at other comparative cases. Medical errors in 2018 brought about 250,000 or more deaths. There was no pandemic over these medical mistakes, no emergency declared. The media snoozed through it all. There was no U.S. response. How about diabetes in 2018? 83,564 cases. No pandemic declared by who, no emergency by the U.S., no attention from the media, no U.S. response. How about heart disease, average annual? 647,000. No pandemic by who, no emergency by the U.S., no media attention, no U.S. response. How about cancer? 606,880 cases in 2019. No global pandemic, no U.S. emergency. Media snoozed through it. U.S. response, zip. How about the annual seasonal flu for 2017-18? 61,000 deaths. Global pandemic? No. U.S. emergency? No. Attention of the media? No. They snoozed through it. U.S. response routine vaccination program. Now, compare that with a COVID-19 flu. 2,415. Global pandemic declared by who? Yes. U.S. emergency declared? Yes. Attention of media 24/7. Humongous. Unbelievable. U.S. response, lockdown, social distancing, destruction of the U.S. economy. What that means is this is a political pandemic. This also turns out to have been planned. I'll give you evidence, proof of that. Right here. Whoa. Dr. Fauci in 2017. This is the guy you're seeing on TV every single day. President Trump will be challenged by a surprise global disease outbreak. He's saying this then. Come again? Back in 2017 at a forum on pandemic preparedness at Georgetown University, Dr. Fauci made an interesting statement. Fauci told the audience the Trump administration will not only be challenged by ongoing global health threats such as influenza and HIV, but also a surprise disease outbreak. Now ask yourself, how can it be a surprise if Fauci is predicting it in 2017? And moreover, is that Fauci's the guy at the National Institutes of Health responsible for preparedness. Why wasn't he preparing us? Because he knew about it already in 2017. The answer should not be difficult to infer. Pushi's been in on this from the beginning. Meanwhile, it turns out that there are 5.7 million companies in the U.S. 90% have less than 20 employees, and 75% of small businesses cannot last a month with zero revenue. We've got to get the country back to work. Now, David Icke, who's a very controversial guy, quite brilliant, I don't always agree with him, but he gave an absolutely sensational interview with the BBC that what's going on here is a deliberate effort to wipe out the middle class and small businesses around the world. A deliberate effort. He talked about the Hunger Games scenario. We have the very rich people, and then all the rest are slaves or serfs, and conjured up the medieval image of the rich living in castles surrounded in moats, while the rest of us are toiling out in the field as serfs and slaves. I think he's got it right. The idea here is a deliberate plan to wipe out the middle class. The statistics I just gave you, about 90% of American corporations having 20 or fewer employees, that 75% of them cannot survive a month with zero revenue, are known, widely known. Anyone can obtain that information. They knew this in advance. They knew if they can shut down the U.S. economy for a month, they can make a devastating impact on America and our quality of life. Now, it turns out David Icke was also talking about the threat from 5G. Now, it just so happens that Wuhan, where we had the outbreak of the coronavirus, is also the area where 5G was initially rolled out. Wuhan has some 10,000 5G antennae. Now, 5G are very dangerous to human beings and other living things, and among their features or effects, they weaken the human immune system so that vulnerabilities you'd normally be able to deal with effortlessly, like normal coronavirus, for example, suddenly become hazards. So what has happened? A lot of people are learning this relationship between 5G and our state of health. We had a 5G ambulance in the UK where 3 workers were so affected by the profound effects that they committed suicide. It was so painful to deal with. But here you have a UK cell towers torched after what the media is calling a bizarre conspiracy theory linking 5G to the coronavirus pandemic. But there's nothing bizarre about it whatsoever. In fact, Dr. Martin Pall, PhD, Professor Emeritus of Biochemistry and Basic Medical Sciences at Washington State University, has published a report, 5G, Great Risk for EU, US, and International Health, compelling evidence for 8 distinct types of great harm caused by electromagnetic field exposure and the mechanism that causes them. To put in the most succinct terms he has observed, putting in tens of millions of 5G antennae without a single biological test of safety has to be about the stupidest idea anyone has had in the history of the world. That report goes on through a lot of science, which only adds to all the other science already available, demonstrating that 5G is a harmful form of technology. So, of course, the BBC and YouTube has tightened their rules after the David Icke 5G interview. Now, you can find yourself banned if you cite parts of the 5G interview. When we look to history, we look in the background, we find back in 2014, the Rockefeller Foundation published a fictional scenario depicting a pandemic to be used for top-down government control. Well, guess what? That's what they're using it for now. A Rockefeller Foundation white paper published in May of 2010 titled Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development takes a look at hypothetical future scenarios that may be used to benefit private globalist corporations, businessmen, and organizations at a later time. Shockingly published in the scenario narrative section on page 18, titled Lockstep, the Rockefeller Foundation nearly hit the nail on the head with its futuristic and fictitious scenario. I mean, what are the chances? Come on. It literally follows lockstep. An excerpt from page 18 reads, in 2012, the pandemic the world had been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1N1, this new influenza strain originating from wild geese was extremely virulent and deadly. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months, the majority of them healthy young adults. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains, even locally. Normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers. Now that is what they are bringing us now. It turns out there were a couple aspects they did not anticipate. For example, that the virus is much weaker than the one that was unleashed in this fantasy scenario. A second, that it's not healthy young adults who are most powerfully affected, but the elderly with pre-existing conditions. For example, in Italy, they discovered that 99% of the reported coronavirus victims suffered from one or more prior conditions, including high blood pressure, diabetes, or heart disease. And when you subtracted the 99 that had pre-existing conditions, the remainder were less than 1%, in fact, 0.8% that had suffered death from coronavirus, which happens to be, interestingly, even less than the 0.9% from all causes in general. And what also they didn't anticipate, and I think this is really monstrously huge, that there would already be available cures for the coronavirus in the form of hydrochloroquine, for example. It turns out that nations that suffer from a lot of malaria take a lot of hydrochloroquine and have virtually no coronavirus deaths. We have a physician in France who had 80 patients who were hospitalized. Their state of symptoms was so severe they were hospitalized. He treated them with hydrochloroquine and this antibiotic, and 79 of them survived. We're getting similar results here in the U.S. A physician with 350 patients, where you would have expected around at least 15 deaths and 35 incubations and all that. They were all treated with hydrochloroquine and the Z-Pack, and there were no deaths and virtually no incubations. In other words, this really works. Now, anyone familiar with statistics knows that if you have a causal factor that's of a low degree of efficacy or potency, you need large numbers to see that it works at all. Like, you might find a 1 or 2% increase against a control. But when you have a powerful effect, small studies can be highly instructive, and that's what we have here with a 79 of 80, with a 350 out of 350, and this has been around for like 35 or 40 years. It's widely used, it's cheap, it's inexpensive, it's readily available. Well, this really mucked up the master plan, because Bill Gates has for decades now been going around the country giving symposia explaining how he thinks the great problem, the great threat mankind is facing is not nuclear war, but a pandemic. So he's made himself the master of virology. He has no medical degree. This is completely fraudulent. There are other reasons to think that Bill Gates is the wrong guy to be in this position, but Bill Gates overlooked that there turns out to be a readily available, cheap, and inexpensive antidote to the coronavirus in this hydroxychloroquine he hadn't known about. It just reflects his ignorance, because he's not, in fact, a trained physician. Here we have another participant, George Soros, announces China must lead the New World Order. This was in 2016. George Soros laid out the global elite's plan for ushering in what he called a New World Order during an interview with the Financial Times. According to Soros, China must lead this New World Order creating it and owning it like the United States does the current order. And mind you, we now can see the outline of the New World Order. It's the rich living in their castles surrounded by moats and the rest of us toiling in the field as serfs and slaves. Not only that, but in 2020, we had another coronavirus simulation. This was in October of 2019, a group of 15 business people, government officials, and health experts gathered around a table in New York to plan out the global response to a nationwide outbreak of a never-before-seen and completely fictional coronavirus. It was a trained exercise with disturbing similarities in retrospect to the 2019 coronavirus, the Chinese virus that's gone global. 3.5 hours later, the group finished the simulation, and despite their best efforts, they couldn't predict the hypothetical coronavirus from killing 65 million people. Well, it ain't going to happen with this one. We've already got a lock on it, but you can see what they had in mind. This was called Event 201. Look it up, check it out. Event 201, Bill Gates right in the center of it. Here is a fascinating photograph. You have many leaders of the media, Bill Moyers, Judy Woodruff, Ted Turner, Barbara Walters, and guess who they're together with? This is a group of only 12 or 14. Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates Sr., George Soros, David Rockefeller. These are some of the key players behind what we're going through now, this attempt to destroy America. Here's Bill Gates talking about MIT developing a new tattoo ID to check for vaccination. Bill Gates has been propounding the idea that we have to be able to prove we've been vaccinated before we can fly on an airplane. Can you believe? And he wants us to be vaccinated, and he's even talking about having monitors on persons. You know, in this 6 foot away social distancing. I mean, it's completely absurd. As Brett Hume observed on Tucker Carlson several weeks ago, you don't shut down a country because of a contagious disease. You don't do it. Particularly not one as modest as this is turning out to be. Well, guess what? I have other photographs of Bill Gates. Here's one I'm looking at. Bill Gates with guess who? Manhattan's most notorious resident, Jeffrey Epstein. Yep, Bill Gates flew on Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express. Are you surprised? Here's another photograph where we have Bill Gates with guess who? Anthony Fauci. Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci. It looks like a love fest. Meanwhile, Madonna's partnering with Bill Gates, donating $1 million to the COVID-19 effort. Well, Madonna, you may recall, on the day of the inauguration of Donald Trump, was talking about her dreaming of blowing up the White House. I mean, that's a quality of person you have in Madonna. Meanwhile, Dr. Fauci has confirmed his friendship with the WHO Director General, where both are connected to the Clinton Foundation in Ethiopia. Who has a greater grudge against Donald Trump? Who would rather than anyone in the world see him not reelected? Yes, you're right, Hillary Clinton. I mean, after all, Hillary knows that historically the greatest advantages an incumbent has going into an election are a strong economy and a surging stock market. That's right where we were. And when you look at the politics of the situation, it becomes stunningly obvious. We went through a year and a half of the Russia hoax, completely manufactured. There was no distant Russian hacking. Instead, it was the IT guy for the DNC, Seth Rich, who downloaded documents directly from the DNC server with the assistance of the familiar internet personality Kim.com, who is disillusioned because as a Bernie Sanders supporter, he had witnessed Debbie Wasserman Schultz sabotaging Bernie's campaign, shifting, for example, 13 primaries that Bernie had won to Hillary's column to guarantee she would be the nominee. And then she lost. So Hillary has a massive grudge, and she is such a vain, venal, sadistic, self-serving, self-centered person. She doesn't give a damn about the rest of the people of the United States. If she can damage Donald Trump, she's going to take satisfaction from that and do everything she can. Meanwhile, Trump is talking about defunding the World Health Organization, which is a really, really good idea because they have been wrong about everything. Meanwhile, surprise, after the Russia hoax fell flat when Robert Mueller went to Congress and didn't even know the contents of his own report, what happened? We had Ukraine Gate. It was Russiagate 2.0, a completely fabricated quid pro quo allegation against the president that had no merit whatsoever. Those of you who followed the hearings closely will know the three key witnesses in the whole case were asked whether there were anything illegal or impeachable about the conversation with the president of Ukraine. All three of them admitted no, that their differences were the president or matters of policy. Well, that's not impeachable, that's politics. That's why you have elections to determine who's going to set the policies of the United States. Donald Trump won. That was followed by the completely absurd effort at impeachment, which, of course, as we well know, fell short, but not for lack of trying. So just as the impeachment falls short, lo and behold, what happens? We have this coronavirus pandemic, or so it is alleged, though the evidence and the data doesn't support it whatsoever. And guess who? Yes, Adam Schiff is now drafting legislation to set up a 9/11 style commission to review the coronavirus response and try to nail Trump. Because in their opinion, he didn't do enough about coronavirus response. The American people, by the way, aren't buying it. Trump's standing has been going up and up and up. In fact, get this from Common Dreams, which is a well-known liberal left website. Dear James, Donald Trump has botched the response to the coronavirus in almost every possible way, and yet his approval rating just hit its highest point ever. Consistent majorities say they approve of his handling of the pandemic, and he's now leading in head-to-head polls in key battleground states like Florida. How is this possible? Here's how. It's because the corporate media is once again playing right into his hands. Every day for 2 hours, Trump is getting free TV time to lie, brag, and bluster about how well everything is going and how everyone else is to blame. And in times of crisis, people want to rally around the president, whoever that is. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has totally vanished from the media, refusing to respond as Trump is surging. Other duplicitous acts, Nancy Pelosi tries to personally cash in on the coronavirus. In the next round of coronavirus release, House Speaker Pelosi is trying to insert a measure that would benefit herself financially. She wants to make big bucks over the deaths of thousands of Americans. It's amazing she has the gall to attempt it. Pelosi wants to roll back the Trump administration's cap on state and local tax deduction. It was done to stop the rich from getting an unfair tax break in paying their fair share of taxes for a party that's always going on about income inequality. You think they would like this? They don't. It hits them in their own pocketbook. As Fox News has reported, the Joint Committee on Taxation projected that those who would face lower tax liability from the elimination of the SALT cap, which only affect those who itemize deductions, 94% earn at least $100,000. The government lose out $77.4 billion in tax dollars, more than half of the amount being saved by taxpayers earning $1 million or more. Those earning more than $200,000 would reap most of the balance, where Nancy Pelosi would make out like a bandit. Here's another corrupt act by a Democrat official. The governor of Nevada banned the use of hydroxychloroquine. Then it turns out he was found hoarding hydroxychloroquine. My own newspaper here, where I reside near Madison, the Wisconsin State Journal, on Sunday, issued an absurd endorsement. Joe Biden is the far better choice to defeat Donald Trump. Well, haven't they been paying attention? I mean, Biden is clearly cognitively impaired. He appears to be brain damaged. He suffers from a variety of maladies. He doesn't know what state he's in. He doesn't know what city he's in. He doesn't know what race he's running. It's absurd. Here's a recent example. Plug pulled on Biden virtual town hall after technical glitches and miscues. Joe Biden's first virtual town hall was marred with technical gaffes and confusions and ended after only 5 minutes. He actually even wandered off of the stage away from the podium. The whole time he was reading from the phone in his hand. I mean, it's embarrassingly bad. Meanwhile, we have social unrest rising as Italy's lockdown enters its fourth week. The country's poorest southern region, hardest hit as people run out of food and money. Surprise, surprise. But we're also having unrest in the USA. Oakland could become the next epicenter as crowds party on the street. Despite warnings and orders to stay at home, some California residents have chosen to party with hundreds of their friends and neighbors instead. This was from the Oakland Police Department. Sunday, during our sideshow enforcement, 3 people were arrested, 14 cited, 12 vehicles towed. Roughly 400 people took part in this disruptive and illegal behavior. Revelers mingled and watched as drivers conducted stunts with cars in the middle of the street. Videos from the spontaneous gathering show people without face masks, clearly breaking the 6-foot social distance spacing guidelines. They're, of course, completely absurd. We have similarly in the London Park after 3,000 people visit. Get this. Despite clear advice, over 3,000 people spent today in Brockwell Park, many of them sunbathing or in large groups. This is unacceptable. Unfortunately, the actions of a minority now mean that, following police advice, Brockwell Park will be closed tomorrow. Well, as Tucker has been emphasizing, and among the few, the decision here to shut down the American economy is going to echo for decades. But here we have a report, in this case from Sean Hannity with 2 physicians, about the role of the hydroxychloroquine. Listen to this.
Right now, the Trump administration continues to take bold measures to contain the spread of corona, while some doctors are now turning toward anti-malarial drugs as a potential treatment to that. Joining us now with reaction, Baylor College medical professor, Dr. Peter Hotez is with us, and also he's a real brain surgeon in real life. A real brain surgeon. Dr. Peter Constantino is with us. All right, let's talk about hydroxychloroquine with azithromycin. Dr. Constantino, I read earlier the study, upstate New York. Your thoughts? Is this potentially what we are thinking tonight it could be?
I'm very, very optimistic about this. So this is not a controlled study. This number of patients that are represented by Dr. Zelensky is significant. Of the 350 patients that they treated, they would have expected at least 15 to 30, maybe 40 hospitalizations and potentially even 2 to 3 deaths. They had 0 hospitalizations, 0 intubations, which is putting a breathing tube down to help somebody breathe, and 0 deaths. So it's not a controlled study, but it certainly looks like more than just coincidence.
All right, Dr. Hotez, what is your take on this?
So my take is I'm aligned with the vice president. Look, chloroquine's got a lot going for it. It kills the virus in the test tube. It suppresses inflammation. We know inflammation in the lungs is a huge reason why people get very sick and die from this virus. And we have some clinical studies conducted in France, in China. The reason why both the vice president and I are not popping the champagne cork is because we've kind of been down this path before with influenza. Hydroxychloroquine showed some promise, chloroquine against the influenza virus in the test tube, but it didn't quite pan out. But look, we have every reason to be optimistic. We have to remember hydroxychloroquine is just one of several new therapies that are rapidly being accelerated into the clinic. I told you last week that you're about to see the full power of American science brought to bear on this problem, and here's an example of it, hydroxychloroquine. But we have other things coming down the pike as well. We have a new antibody therapy, which I think will be announced later this week, possibly by the FDA, which I even have higher expectations for than even hydroxychloroquine, because we know it worked with the previous SARS virus back in 2003, so that's going to be rolled out. You're going to see a number of new therapies moving forward, some of them repurposed old drugs applying to this problem, others brand new drugs, and then the vaccine down the line. So this is going to be a continuing story of lots of new exciting therapies.
Dr. Constantino, you agree with the other possibilities as well? There's real hope tonight for the country.
There is, and we're going to find something or some combination of things that makes the difference and turns the tide, and this is going to be more self-limited than the dire warnings that we have been preparing for. I think it's important, though, to realize that with the hydroxychloroquine, this is a ubiquitously available drug. It's cheap. It's $12 per dosage cycle, and so compared to some of these more exotic drugs, compared to the things that are not quite as available across the world, I think there's a lot of promise in hydroxychloroquine.
So what we have here is a cheap and effective drug that's readily available, doesn't require a vaccine. Now that defeats Bill Gates' plan, because I guarantee you that vaccine is going to have some miniature form of technology that's going to be like, chipping you, and it's going to enable them to track everything you do, everywhere you go, and I wouldn't doubt that they could control your moods, and even if they so desire, extinguish your life by means of that vaccine. You do not want to take that vaccine. Meanwhile, Michael Codry, hydroxychloroquine works by activating the innate immune system. There's a lot in favor of it. On the other hand, there's a lot of phony going on. Get this, I got a connect in a hospital in Palm Springs that says they're being told to put possible COVID-19 on all patients. The reason is they're going to get reimbursed more by the government. Embarrassingly bad. Here's Candace Owen. On reevaluation by the National Institute of Health, only 12% of death certificates have shown a direct causality from coronavirus. That is from the Italian scientific advisor. Meanwhile, the Michigan Democratic governor threatened the licenses of doctors and pharmacists who prescribed hydroxychloroquine to treat coronavirus. This is a woman, Gretchen Whitmer, threatened to pull the license. Meanwhile, a Michigan man credits President Trump for his survival of coronavirus. Say government Whitmer is sentencing people to death. A 38-year-old Michigan man with no underlying conditions contracted coronavirus last week, was successfully treated with a drug combination being touted by President Trump. Jim Santilli told talk show host Steve Gruber he's living proof the combination of malarial drug hydroxychloroquine and the antibiotic azithromycin works. Santilli said he became seriously ill March 18th with severe cardiac and respiratory issues, was admitted to the Henry Ford Macomb Hospital in Metro Detroit. According to Gruber, Santilli said the biggest problem was waiting for test results. It took 4 days to come back. In the meanwhile, his condition worsened by the hour. He thought he was going to die. Santilli said he was slowly drowning, was convinced he would not live until midnight. That's when the doctors made the decision that changed everything. The survivor said the drug combination began to work within a few hours. He credits Trump with his survival. Donald Trump recommending that medication combination saved my life and a lot of other people's lives. Santilli criticized Governor Gretchen Whitmer for a recent threat against doctors and pharmacists and believes it's a terrible decision, adding she's sentencing people to death. Well, the governor has reversed himself. Here's another story. Dr. Mark Siegel defends the hydroxychloroquine treatment for coronavirus with the most moving story imaginable. Dr. Mark Siegel, Fox News medical correspondent, joined Tucker Carlson Tuesday to discuss the hydroxychloroquine treatment for the coronavirus. I watched this show. Several studies have shown tremendous success with hydroxychloroquine and Z-Paks to treat the virus. Dr. Mark Siegel ended the segment with this moving testimonial. Dr. Siegel, Tucker, I want to tell you about a 96-year-old man in Florida who one night said, I don't think I'm going to make it. I feel very weak. The end is coming. I'm coughing. I'm short of breath. I can't get up from the couch. The next day, he was on hydroxychloroquine and antibiotics per his cardiologist. He got up the next day. He was fine. This man is my father. I mean, wow. That's speaking from the heart, genuine. And yet the New York Times, which is a voice piece for the deep state, I refer to the Times as the Langley newsletter. It's so infested with the CIA, deceptively reported that Trump had a financial interest in hydroxychloroquine. How absurd is that? Meanwhile, here's from the Virology Journal back on 22 August 2005. This shows just one of many, many reports about its efficacy. chloroquine is a potent inhibitor of SARS coronavirus infection and spread. But here's another. Bill Gates is now funding the New York University study on the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine at the same time he launches his vaccination. Gee, no conflict of interest there, is it? Gates is so set on giving all of us one of these vaccines that he's going to try to discredit all the evidence that shows hydroxychloroquine is wonderful, the perfect drug for the occasion, cheap, plentiful, available. I say anyone out there who's affected by coronavirus, check with your physician immediately. Go for hydroxychloroquine with a Z-Pack. Meanwhile, Business Insider, a potential coronavirus vaccine funded by Bill Gates, is set to begin testing in people with the first patient expected to get it today. That's because Gates wants to make money off of this any way he can. Here, in the meanwhile, I've been doing a daily update and report with Dean Ryan in L.A. and Mike Bear in Seattle. And one of our listeners wrote to us, okay, if this is all just a big conspiracy, can someone explain why? If it really is orchestrated, there must be a purpose or benefactor, yet no one seems to win from this. Well, guess what? We just had the publication of Henry Kissinger and Bill Gates call for mass vaccination and global governance, believe it or not. Henry Kissinger just authored an article published on April 3rd, 2020. The coronavirus pandemic will forever alter the world order. In this opinion piece, Kissinger references past lessons learned from the Marshall Plan and from the Manhattan Project, and from that he outlines 3 domains he says the U.S. needs to implement. Number 1, Kissinger says we need to develop new technologies and techniques for infection control and commensurate vaccines across large populations. But remember all the data I gave you already showing that the percentage of death, the number of deaths from coronavirus is a tiny fraction of that from the seasonal flu. So what he's saying already is false, but he's calling for vaccinating large population. His second domain proposes healing the world economy by going to electronic transfers, in other words, getting rid of cash. This is a banker's wet dream. They want all of our transactions to be electronic, so they know every time we buy a candy bar, a shotgun, go to a movie, they can control it all. The third is to embrace a liberal world order, which really is what David Icke was talking about, namely this medieval conception where the rich are living in their castles and the rest of us are working as slaves. They're wiping out the middle class. They're wiping out small businesses, which has been the greatest strength of the American economy. Here's another article from a Zero Hedge giving us a hint of what's going on. Immunity certificates are coming. COVID survivors to get special passports enabling them to return to normalcy. This is coming from a billionaire hedge fund manager. Hydroxychloroquine and antibiotics appear to help. There's increasing evidence that the asymptomatic infection rate could be as much as 50 times higher than expected. What's important about that is it means that if there are 50 times more who have the disease than those who are actually hospitalized or die from it, that means the rate of death is very, very low, much lower than we think. If this is true, he adds, the severity and death rate could be much lower than anticipated, and we could be closer to herd immunity than projected. One could imagine a world in the next few months where everyone is tested and all but the immune compromised go back to a socially distanced but more normal life. We wear bracelets or carry a foreign certificate which indicate our status. Yeah, let's all cheer for antibody-based freedom. This is outrageous. Trump is reporting. We all know what media's push to keep America closed as long as possible is really all about. Trump, who has said he'd like to reopen the economy sooner rather than later, has tweeted, "The lamestream media is a dominant force in trying to get me to keep our country closed as long as possible in the hope that it will be detrimental to my election success. The real people want to get back to work as soon as possible. We will be stronger than ever before." Get this, Andrea Mitchell, you may have thought she was an objective journalist. She's upset that Donald Trump's popularity, his support from the people is skyrocketing. Why? She's complaining about the 2-hour briefings he's given because they make him look competent. Well, I got news for you, Andrea. That's because he is competent. We have more Americans approving of Trump's coronavirus response than the media. And get this, President Trump's approval has hit an all-time high in a Gallup poll. Last week, approval of President Trump's handling the coronavirus surged on an ABC News poll with 55% approving, 43% disapproving. Let me just remind you, you can go to wrldodometers.info for updates on these numbers, but they'll give you some idea. COVID-19, this is from January 1st through April 1st. COVID-19, 46,438 deaths worldwide. Seasonal flu, same period of time, 121,993. So the seasonal flu is 3 times more potent than COVID-19, and yet we're not shutting down the country or declaring a pandemic because of the flu. Malaria, 246,000. Suicide, nearly 270,000. Traffic fatalities, 338,715. HIV/AIDS, 421,808. Alcohol, 627,571. Smoking, 1,254,352. Cancer, 2,060,730. Hunger, 2,806,314. Compared to those death numbers for the same interval of time, COVID-19 at 46,500 is trifling. American greatness, Trump needs to tell Fauci, the NIH, and the FDA, you are fired. The fate of the country hangs more in the hands of one man than ever before in our history. Donald Trump seems to be perceiving that we're being subjected to a massive hoax. And I say, even though I am myself an agnostic and neither believe in the existence of God nor in the non-existence of God, God bless Donald Trump and God bless the USA. And I can't thank you enough for featuring me tonight on your show.
Thank you, Jim. As always, I appreciate the download. We all do. That's amazing. We're definitely living in some interesting times. Any last thoughts or comments on this whole thing? What do you think? What's your opinions on all this?
We have to get the country back to work. I would like for Trump to do it now. There's no reason that everyone should be kept away from their churches, their temples, their places of worship. Easter is a special moment in the lives of religious people worldwide. I say, let's get the country back to work. Let's get everyone into the churches. These social distancing requirements are frankly absurd. The threat is minimal, and we have a cure for it in hydroxychloroquine, so we can go back to work, and we know what to do with those few that are going to be struck down by this apparently manufactured pandemic. This is all political and does not represent a medical emergency.
So let me ask you this, Jim. I'm sure you've thought about this as well. So because the middle class is the bone of the economy for the United States, is there... I'm trying to figure out how a good way to put this. Like, if they're trying to get rid of the middle class, and the middle class is the backbone of the economy, can this be potentially a good thing where to show the top 1%, the high class, whatever you want to call them, so they get rid of the middle class, then what? So the economy tanks. Isn't that bad for the top 1%, for the top class?
But you don't understand. They want the mega corporations. They want the Amazons. They want the Walmarts. They want the Costcos to run the world. They don't want those small businesses. They're going to control it. That's why I gave you the image. Think of the Hunger Games, the movie. That's what they want.
Right.
Think of medieval times, the rich in their castles, surrounded by moats. The rest of us toiling in the field. This is for all the marbles. This is their effort to transform the world permanently. And I'm grateful to say that it looks as though it's not going to happen, but they're still out there trying to inflict this massive damage, okay? So we must all be aware. We must all get back to work. We must know if anyone is hit, we have a cure for it. It's a virtual certain cure. I've given you the evidence. I've given you the statistics. If you want more, go to my blog at jamesfetzer.org and you'll find a brand new piece I just put up today of basic statistics about the COVID pandemic. And you'll see embedded there a 2-hour presentation I gave on my own show that I paralleled here for you in a more concise format. You can see it there with all the documents and all the photographs and all the other evidence I was providing that I was alluding to here on the show. You can find it all there in spades, jamesfetzer.org, or we're putting up these daily reports we're doing every single day at Jim Fetzer. Go to Twitter, at Jim Fetzer, and check it out.
That's right. And so thank you very much for all that, Jim. And then also, what was I also going to say? So the thing that I see as a problem here coming up, so regardless of whether we go recover from this or not, so if we recover from this, we still have the same problem of the Federal Reserve and all those problems.
You got to pay closer attention. Trump has already tucked the Federal Reserve into the Department of the Treasury. Now listen, I have a commitment I have to make now. So that's why I said at the beginning I could do an hour. We're over. So right. I want to thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure. I'll be glad to come back again.
Thank you, Jim. Take care and keep in touch.
You got it.
Take care. Bye. All right. Well, that was that, everybody. Thank you very much. We got the intel straight from the scoop. We're trying to figure it all out. We'll see what it is, what it is, and as you can see, we're all running out of time. But at the same time, just keep vigilant. We're figuring things out. What else are we going on? We'll see what it is. As Jim mentioned right before, that was one of the things that we wanted to talk about as well. Hopefully we can discuss it further on the next show, is that there is a huge thing that's been going on with the Federal Reserve, with Steve Mnuchin behind this, with the U.S. Treasury, and all this, and not to mention all these other things that are happening. So a lot of things to talk about, and it's a good thing we're taking care of it all. So keep in touch. Thank you very much, and God bless.